This is the information and directions for follow-up 4, your last follow-up, so you're very near the end of the course. It's called Putting It All Together. Essentially what we're going to do is have you use the information that you have learned through this course to apply it to working as a school administrator. So the beginning is just a little bit of an introduction here, and then we're going to be talking about this teacher whose name is Miss Tripp, a third-year reading teacher in a middle school. So there's some information about her scores and testing and some background information. You have been appointed the new assistant principal at this same middle school. So take your time, read through the information and the scenario and essentially what's happening. There's some discussion about the lesson. They had a lesson as being effective developing, so she's not quite on target. Mixed observations, mixed reviews. You're working with a department chair as well. So you can kind of scan through this data here, and the principal is asking you to meet with the department chair to develop an assistance plan. So of course that's course content that we have discussed and that we will cover. And then you're going to have to meet with the department chair and then meet with the teacher. And then you also have responsibility for planning professional development for the faculty. So that model of the professional development planning guide will come back into play. Again, now this is working with your group, so there will be some online activities where you'll be able to work as a group to essentially pre-write the various sections. There's part A, B, C, D, and E. So you'll be assigned in different groups to do the pre-writing, but then everybody will have access to all of the information. You and you alone are responsible for the work that you submit. So while we might be pre-writing, it still does need to be your own work. We're not doing a group project. So in part A, dealing with Miss Tripp, you're going to look at the developmental characteristics. So that's chapter 4 in the text, where you're going to look at her as an adult learner and determine based on how she's reacting in the data that you've reviewed in terms of where you would characterize her. In part B, you're going to plan an agenda for your meeting with the department chair because you have to meet to create an assistance plan. So there's that's covered in the text, and then also the assistance planning. Think about the direct assistance like you did in the other follow-up in follow-up 3, and information on how to provide that. And there's also assistance plans and strategies will be listed in Canvas. So you're going to come up with the plan. You're going to think about your agenda for the conference, for the meeting with the department chair and the topics. And then part C, you're going to have a conference with the teacher. What do you plan for the conference with Miss Tripp? And then you're going to need to think specifically about how you're going to explain the assistance plan, how you introduce it, how do you get buy-in from the teacher, and then what would be the preferred conference style, which is also in Glickman. And then you need specific references to course content as well. Part D is the professional planning, so there'll be specific resources for that to assist you in putting together that plan. And then, of course, the last piece is the reflection. I want you to spend a good amount of time synthesizing a quality reflection, and that your reflection must include these two standards, 2 and 5 from ELCC, which are on Canvas early on in the course as a reference. And then you need to integrate those two standards with the Maryland Instructional Leadership Framework. Make a comparison, find the similarities as you talk about your capacity to supervise. This has emphasis on discussions, handouts, and of course the Glickman text. There's additional exhibits here observation reports in Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, which you should read through and dissect and get the information that you can glean about this teacher as you prepare for the writing of this follow-up paper. Then when you look at Part A in the rubric, you have elaboration and then course content in Part A, so you want to make sure that you include that. And in the pre-writing, that's how it will be structured, so that all of your colleagues are sharing key citations and sources of information, so that when you approach each section, you'll have that as a graphic organizer or organizer for your writing. When we look at Part B, you need to make clear connections and recommendations. Again, course content is mentioned, although there's no fair and ethical, which is nice, and then an agenda and assistance plan would need to be included. When you go to Part C, the conference plan, complete conference with appropriate questions and comments. Sufficient elaboration demonstrates understanding of course content that is relevant. So you want to infuse that in Part C. When you get to Part D, the professional development plan, sufficient elaboration, and also connection to course content. Part E, same idea in your reflection, sufficient elaboration, and then connection to course content. Just be sure to address all of the components. And lastly, there is a component for APA and free of technical errors. And we'll correct this to the APA 6 format. Again, we will attack this as we get to the last few weeks of the course, and then towards the end, the activities will be the pre-writing, where you'll actually dissect the major components and get information and feedback from your colleagues. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me.